Hi, and welcome to another episode of State of the Fleet Industry video series. I'm Chris Brown with Automotive Fleet. In this episode, I connect with David Hayward, Director of Fleet Management for ABN. David discusses the lessons and hacks that he uses to make his job easier, and he also shares advice on what he wished he knew when he started in fleet management.
The Voyager Fleet program offers advanced controls, real-time alerts, and flexible purchase settings that help prevent fraud and employee misuse. Take control of your operations and keep every dollar working for your fleet.
Hey, well, we're here today for this next episode of State of the Fleet Industry video series, and I'm delighted to be here with David Hayward, Director of Fleet Management for ABM. David, welcome.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Sure. Hey, let's start out. Just tell us who ABM is first.
Sure. ABM is a building services company. There's a number of different services that we provide, from janitorial through specialized electrical and e-mobility, including we're the number one installer of electric vehicle chargers in the United States.
Wow,
on the
that's
commercial
great.
side.
Sure. Hey, and just tell us, what's the range of vehicles that you run?
So we have everything from golf carts all the way up to class 6 vehicles, but the primary bread and butter vehicle would be our transit van or Ford F-150.
Okay, great. Well, hey, let's dive in. And really, this is going to be kind of a blueprint or a primer, some really great info, hacks, and tips for other fleet managers. Let's start out with the question on everyone's mind. What I wish I knew when I started in fleet management. All right, David, how would you answer that question?
I would say the first one in the back of my mind has always annoyed me is that I took about 2 years before I really put myself out there and started to network with fleet peers. So I was very focused on trying to learn my role. I was brand new to fleet, and I certainly had great mentors in Jack O'Donnell and Chuck Woolard. And had the pleasure of working with Jonathan Cammons at that same time. So I had plenty of industry knowledge, but I wish I had spent more time going to NAFA events, going to AFLA, going to different networking opportunities. I did get to go to a couple of the product previews, Ford and GM, for example, and that was always fun, but I didn't know anybody because I didn't see them except once a year. So that was something I definitely wanted to do. The other one I would say is watching out for hidden costs. So we often talk about how a vehicle costs X amount for the lease, Y amount for maintenance, etc. Sometimes those fees can add up, and you really need to watch those line items on your invoices. And that can be difficult when you have a large fleet, when it's 3,000 vehicles, 6,000 vehicles, and that's where I think, and a spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about AI. But I think that's where AI is going to really help with a lot of the invoice processing, invoice verification in the future. And then I would say investing upfront in driver training and culture pays off a lot when it comes to reducing accidents. So, we at Wyeth, going back 20 years, we actually had a video that everyone got. It was literally called Before the Keys. And they had to watch this video. It was on VHS before DVD, before online. And you had to watch this and understand what it was expected of you as a driver, and in terms of your behavior and in terms of maintaining the vehicle. So it was a wonderful exercise and something I've tried to replicate in other companies since then. And then last one I would mention would be regulatory compliance. So my initial role, I was primarily focused on the European fleets, and compliance was, while important, but was kind of more default there. Whereas in my next role at Rent-A-Kill, within about 6 months, I was thrust into a DOT audit. And that was something that was fun. I passed, no fines, so that was good. But it certainly was a tough lesson to learn. And ever since then, I've always made sure that at any company I'm at, that there is good quality DOT processes in place.
Really good. Okay, so yeah, networking, regulatory compliance, really understanding those hidden costs, and starting with driver training and culture, really for really big things. Okay, so let's talk about young fleet managers. Okay, What skills would you say that young fleet managers should really adapt to succeed in this industry?
I always find this funny because I still consider myself to be the young fleet manager, but here I am 20 years later. I would say, um, I'd say I have five things that I
Okay.
would mention. One would be communication skills. So effectively managing your communications to drivers, to leadership, suppliers. So that's communicating up, down, and across, and having to adjust your style as you do so. Another one would be something along the lines of data literacy. So ensuring that you understand and have a comfort level in just pure basic fleet data, but then also now with the evolving space in telematics and AI, we definitely have to have a comfort level when it comes to that. Compliance awareness, I've mentioned this already, but understanding DOT, but then also understanding what that means for registering vehicles, what it might mean for ELD mandates, etc. I mean, I'm talking in very broad terms here, but it is something that most fleet managers should be aware of. Even if you have a sedan fleet or even if you have a small pickup fleet, there are times where DOT will come into play. And then having a problem-solving mindset. And I think my buddy Jonathan has often talked about fleet being, never boring. There's always a new challenge each day, and it's a good thing because we stretch ourselves, we learn, we grow, and then we share that information. And I think that's one of the wonderful things when it comes to fleet management and NAFA and AFLA and the other organizations that are out there, is that everyone is very willing to share their information, not pricing, not contract terms, but the what is keeping you awake at night type of scenario, and how did I solve that problem because I went through it once before. And then finally, my fifth one would be adaptability. So, nothing stays, as I mentioned, there's a new challenge every day, but nothing really stays the same. There are certain aspects that are core to fleet, like there are 8 essentials in the NAFA CAFM program, which are core. But then we never talked about AI very much when we were doing the telematics rollout that I did in 2015, and now that has changed the landscape entirely. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out and how people adapt to it, both drivers, fleet managers, and suppliers.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you talk about problem solving mindset. Can you give me a real life case study that you've really tackled, how you've tackled a tough fleet problem?
Sure. I'd say one would be around upfitting. So one
Okay.
of the challenges we have, and this is across the board, and I know a lot of people are going to be nodding when I say this, is that we get status from various checkpoints along the way, but they're not always in a centralized system. They're not always talking to one another. And so sometimes it takes a lot of manual intervention. And so building strong relationships early helps you when those problems inevitably come up, because we're all human and they are all human processes that we are doing. This isn't a robotic industry when it comes to upfitting and transportation of vehicles. So having those relationships where you have that phone number and you can make that call to say, hey, I understand that this is a challenge for us, but this is a particularly important one for me. So can you help make sure that VP gets his vehicle, or this particular account which is desperate for a pickup truck gets the pickup truck first. So that is definitely something that I've used across my career, but even today here at ABM. I think another real life case study or challenge, I should say, would be around rear end collisions. It's by far the number one accident type across many fleets, and certainly ABM is no different. So using telematics and AI cameras to using the technology and AI cameras to do in-cab alerts and perhaps advise the driver or forewarn the driver of upcoming situations. For example, following too close, or rapid acceleration, or the other big one obviously is harsh braking. That's always a fun one to talk to the driver about, because they say, I know I'm braking because I'm pressing on the brake. You don't need to warn me, but to at least give them the feedback, hey, this was a harsh event, and you need to perhaps accelerate less so you can brake less. And then I did mention earlier about responding to a DOT audit. That was a really tough problem. We had to at that former company, we had to get driver qualification files centralized, having a fleet that was decentralized for 30 plus years. So doing that in time for the auditor to turn up and review at random various files and various vehicle records, that was a tough challenge, and just proved the point that you need to be prepared. You can't do this on the fly. Again, I got lucky because we had a very kind auditor who literally said, I want to make your company better when I leave. And I thought that was the right kind of regulatory attitude. This isn't about trying to, a lot fines. This is more about having good processes in place and having a quality product or quality service that you're providing to your drivers.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm going to follow up with two more quick ones. Give me a fleet management hack, something that really is going to save time and reduce some stress. What are you looking at these days?
I'm a huge user of ChatGPT. I use it all the time now. I know that, and we're lucky at ABM. We have an enterprise license, so we have our own instance that allows us to use the technology without our contract data going out into the ether. So I'm able to plug contracts in. I'm able to plug data in and actually say, hey, help me analyze this data. Sometimes it's help me refine this email so that it is more clear.
Yeah.
And my favorite is when somebody sends me a picture of a VIN number, and then instead of having to write out that 17 digits, I can drop it into ChatGPT and it spits out the VIN number for me. Something relatively straightforward, but it's a big time saver. And that's what it is. You're going to be able to do more with the same amount of time. Just routine exercises become easier.
Wow, that's really incredible. Yeah, great hack there. Let's just finish it up on technology and how it's transforming fleet safety and operations. What's your take on that?
So I think the big one is AI cameras. I kind of alluded to that earlier. So beforehand, we would have maybe some kind of alert in the vehicle based on what the driving behavior was. Now we can actually monitor the driver's facial awareness. Yeah. Shall we say facial awareness? But you know what I mean. So that we can monitor if they're drowsy, we can monitor if they're on the phone, we can monitor if they're eating, and we can actually give real-time in-cab alerts so that we can warn the individual, hey, what you're doing is an unsafe act. And hopefully they will take that seriously and put seatbelts on or whatever the thing might be. A lot of times in the past with telematics, you were getting reports after the fact. So there were 14 occasions where David was driving without his seatbelt. Well, that's great. Now it takes time for me to go to David and talk to him about the fact that he has that poor behavior. But that happens after the fact, and it takes additional time out of both my day and the driver's day. Now in-cab alerts, it's a lot easier to give that kind of real time, I should say, to give some real time alerts and real time driving coaching. And then the final point about AI cameras is we can monitor if the effect is working. So if we are still getting David with his 14 seatbelt violations, we can still reach out to him and talk to him about that. But we can also have the discussion about the fact that his device is telling him, hey, put your seatbelt on or buckle up or whatever it might be.
Great.
So I'm very excited about that. And of course, there's so many benefits to telematics and AI. From insurance savings and incident reductions. But at the end of the day, as we say at ABM, the goal of having this program is to ensure that every team member gets home to their friends and family safe and sound every day.
Sure. Well, on that note, David, just want to thank you once again for being on this episode of State of the Fleet Industry. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Chris.